Yeah.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us at our curriculum meeting. It is Tuesday, April 9th. It is 3:32, and we're going to get started. This meeting will also be live streamed and recorded on MSAD11.org. We'll do committee member intros and then board intros, and then we have some admin and some staff. So we have all the varieties. Ms. Diane.
Diane Potter.
Alyssa Tracy.
Jeff Hanley.
Linda Caputo.
Thank you.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
You folks next.
Sarah Bolnick-Ignaziak, Assistant Director of Special Services.
Terry McGuire, Director of Technology.
Thank you. And our guests, please.
I'm Jess Merrill, I'm a life skills teacher at the high school.
Thank you.
Stephanie Pound, life skills teacher at the high school.
Great.
Catherine Bischoff, social studies teacher at the high school.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to our meeting. I will pass it to Angela to get us going.
Okay.
Is the heat on right now?
It does
Is
seem
it
a little
seriously
bit
happening?
on. We can turn the heat down a little for us. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Usually it's a hot flash.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the first agenda item is a proposal that's being brought to us from our two life skills teachers and our Office of Special Services for us to consider clarifying the pathway to graduation for a certain group of students who are enrolled in our life skills programming at the high school. And there's two components of life skills, a functional life skill and an academic life skills. And my understanding is that just means level of readiness for a certain type of learning experience to ensure there's a level of readiness for life, just like all high school students. So it's really interesting that this came up. Jess Merrill is new to our system. And so she's got some experience with this. And so this has been born out of a number of conversations. And if you recall, Jess came to us to a board meeting earlier this year to propose unified basketball. And that was a great resounding success. And I think Stephanie, you were part of that experience. And then there's some other proposals on the general board agenda for some other unified extra co-curricular experiences for students. But it's coming here first because it's an academic, so a teaching and learning experience. And we found two things were happening, and then I'm gonna sort of let Jess and Steph walk through the experience with you and the proposal. But two things were happening is that we have students in the life skills program receiving services across the building based on their IEPs. And it would come time for their transition out of high school, AKA graduation. And some students would be able to earn a high school diploma and or engage in the ceremony. And some students would earn a certificate of attendance. But the clarity around that is what was, well, let's just say it wasn't entirely clear how those decisions were made. It seemed like there were some decisions being made around that in the IEP meeting, but weren't always entirely, it wasn't always clear in our policy of the appropriate pathway for the student. So that's why this should be a straightforward proposal, but there are a couple policy questions that are going to come up, which is why it's also important that it's here.
Can I ask a question and then maybe see if I'm on the right track? So this would add a layer, but the IEP is still its independent function. And then this would just add the layer of giving them the rubric, if you would, for how they can achieve whichever path. Awesome. So I'm just thinking of resourcing for the staff that are already very busy and
Yeah.
paperwork and the like.
So I want to be clear, it's not a policy proposal right now. It's a teaching and learning proposal.
Okay.
If it can be approved, it would go to the policy committee for the policy implications, and it would go to the full board. So let's talk about the policy implications and then talk about the programming. So the policy implications are this. As Jess outlined here, as the team outlined here, we have students receiving special education services clause within our IKF policy, which I, some reason, failed to copy, but I can get that if we need it. I've included it.
I know, you
Something.
did. Yeah, you did.
Okay. So basically what this means is students can meet the learning results through their IEP. So there's a route for students to have some accommodations and modifications to ensure that they can access learning and graduate with alongside their peers with the support that's necessary for them to be successful. No problem. The challenge is on the first page of our policy are our listed academic requirements. And like for the state, there's 11 credits that are required. For this district, there are 22 credits. We outline where the credits have to be earned. So like 4 in English, 3 in social studies, 3 in math, so on. That also is not a problem. The problem we have is that we also then say in social studies, the 3 you have to earn are 1 in world cultures and 2 credits in US history. In English, we don't give that delineation. We say 4 years of English and they select the pathways that they want or that they can take. In math, it's just changed to Algebra 1, geometry, and a 3rd year. So they have some flexibility. But it's because we say Algebra 1 and geometry that some of our students have IEPs that will, in this program specifically, that will allow them to graduate with 3 years of math. And it would certainly be aligned to the algebraic standards or strands in the learning results, but probably not at like 10th grade level. Same with Algebra 1. Some students, maybe there'll be some, or there'll be parts of the standard, but not sort of the whole picture that other 10th graders would experience. But because we put very specifically the courses, that's where we're having a policy implication. That really is the most significant policy implication. Because you'll see in the proposal, a few other areas that typically come up as questions in situations like this are attended to inside this proposal, which I want us to talk through. The question, just so you know, is can the policy be adjusted to still expect those courses generally and not have it be written in policy? Does that make sense? Still expect 3 credits of math and then the program of studies instead, or the handbook say it needs to be Algebra 1, geometry, a choice.
Yeah.
And it says Algebra 2 there because that's the old one.
Yeah, it's the old one, yep.
Or an equivalent based upon an IEP plan, right? I went and researched other districts and they do it that way. Our high school has not been as amenable to that in the past because of the standards-based, because of our approach to having a traditional system and a standards-based system at the same time running. They were getting nervous about what that meant during the proficiency-based era. So the policy implication is, can we maintain the 22 credits and the expectations of requirements of, and then reword what those expectations are within the program of studies and the student handbook instead of in the policy. All our policy, remember, student handbooks and program of studies are approved by board and therefore policy. Just kind of a more granular view of policy than the broad one. So that's the policy implication. So if we want to go, we're going to go through the proposal, and if we still want to move forward with this, we can make a recommendation. And then that recommendation can go to policy and they can decide if they want to make that adjustment. We'll bring in some high school staff for that too. And then if that goes forward, it will go to the board. Make sense?
Yes.
Sorry that it takes me a while to like go really clear.
My world in policy appreciates that we don't go to the nitty gritty in the policy. We do it in the supplemental documents.
Right,
So-
goal-oriented policies
Yeah.
versus procedural
Agreed,
policies,
yeah.
yes. So, what I did actually get this to you ahead of time,
Mhm.
which is like for me a great thing. And I don't want to get into the Unified Social Studies course yet, just the path to graduation.
Mhm.
I'd love it if Jess and Stephanie could just share, you don't have to read through this or whatever, just
No,
generally
got it.
what it is,
Yeah.
why. And any thoughts you want to add that might help us with questions we could have. And if not, then I'll add to it. So don't worry, don't feel pressured.
Yeah, no pressure after all that, really.
No, just kidding. So when I first started here, working with Stephanie, that the pathways to graduation were kind of limited for our students with being able to march with their peers, working to the same potential as their grade level peers, but it looks different. And to know that a bunch of more on my end of it, because I do more of the functional life skills and she does the academic life skills side. My students receiving a certificate of attendance or a certificate of completion that and not being able to march with their peers was really concerning to me. And I've been in other districts where I've seen that students use that their curriculum is based off of their IEPs through the main learning result, and they're working as to their potential based off the resources given to them, and they're still able to graduate with their peers and into a program that is of their pathway. And I think that much more reflects can't think of the word I'm looking for at the moment.
Sort of an authentic experience. for
Yeah,
them.
and also, like, I don't really want to jump around, but just the idea of like my students who are at a kindergarten, maybe first grade level, can't read, taking an Algebra 2 course is really not appropriate, and it's not providing that clarity and that transparency that their transcript would look like, and it doesn't. There's a lot of confusion that way. A lot of parents they're scared to death of their students receiving a certificate of completion. So they automatically was like, so these students, so I've got parents right now that are like, nope, they're taking the classes, they're taking this,
I
and
got you.
it's really setting them up for
That's scary
failure.
too. Yeah.
Setting them up for
Yeah.
failure because our students are not at an Algebra
Right.
1, Algebra 2 level
Right.
or or the reading ability of a high school student. So going into like being able to early on, even in middle school, being able to identify what my program would look like versus Stephanie's program, so parents can understand what the expectations are while they are in high school, the courses that they can take, and then the pathways, like what my program is versus Stephanie's, like when they transition out of high school, transition in the high school level through their IEPs is it's like what drives the IEP. So the sooner that we can start to provide that clarity to parents as like my program is more for adult programming, day programming, assisted living. Stephanie's is towards possibly like a Strive University, maybe a community college or
Maybe just a job.
a job after
yeah,
high school.
yeah.
And I think that this proposal will give more clarity to parents being able to pick which way they want to go, which pathway. But it's helpful for us, and it's helpful for teachers to have a plan as opposed to everyone's gonna have to take Algebra 2. And I mean, we are not doing that in our classroom, so it's not
No, I mean, even at my level, my students are slightly higher, but they're, typically like maybe fourth, fifth, sixth would be really high. And we're calling it Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry, and they're doing some of those concepts in there, but they're not getting the depth of what they would be getting if geometry, we get to like area and perimeter of, rectangles and squares, in geometry, whether we're not really doing Pythagorean theorem and that sort of thing. So it's just more like, well, how can I use geometry in my real world life? I can, measure how big my room is so that I know what size carpet to get, or I can measure my countertop so I know how much I need, count how much countertop I need if I'm gonna do that, or how much room in my shelves.
Yeah, and right now that's not transparent. And right now, if a student's is sort of following an academic pathway, we are on the transcript calling it Algebra 1, Geometry, and
Yeah,
Algebra 2,
gotcha.
and it isn't.
Right.
Yeah,
No.
I get that.
So-
We're gonna get that.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is create something that's honest,
Mhm.
transparent, so whomever sees the transcript can be like, okay, I have an honest assessment of what's going on here, and we're in a good position to support this person moving forward. And the families can plan appropriately, and say, okay, based on the IEP goals, I see where the child is. It's not Algebra 2 at the high school level, but there are some algebraic concepts and they're sort of at this level based on the goals of the IEP. And and to be clear, the reason why it says, I don't know, what is it? There's some sort of, what do we call it when it says Algebra 1 on it? Something, there's a
Oh,
level
yeah.
on it or
An
something.
asterisk?
Yeah, there's like a,
There's
modified curriculum.
yeah, there's something on there, but it's
But you wouldn't know that's what
not
it
really
meant.
clear.
No.
And so, it's there though, so they can potentially earn a diploma.
Yeah.
And so we're basically trying to be super rigid with our policy. And then playing the game to get our students to meet
Mm.
so that they can earn a diploma. And what this group is trying to say is, let's hold these students to an appropriate and high level of expectation. Let's build opportunities for them to have peer experiences and to be part of a community. Let's ensure that their learning is applied so that it will make sense to them for whatever lifestyle they're living. But let's be honest about it in our assessment. And let's be super clear by actually having an instructional pathway. So Jess is coming in and not all of this was clear. It's sort of like mud.
It's mine.
And she's like, oh, well, this is something that I'd like to have some structure around. While also working through the IEP process. This can kind of help orient that. I think the more clear we are with families, the better, stronger relationships we can have with families. And the more opportunities we can realistically see for all students. So that's really what this is offering. I do want to add a couple things because it came up in our meeting. And I know it will come up, so I'm gonna just say it. If you look at, we added a note. Where did I put that? I did prep, now I can't think where it is. Maybe it was in my notes and not in this part. We said that if a student was, oh, it's the wrong version, that's the issue. If a student was in functional life skills, they would earn a pass or not a pass, fail or something, not yet met. If they were in academic life skills, they would earn a grade, but it would be unranked. So that's the proposal. You can change that with that request. And the reason for that is because we have a pretty competitive community that appreciates the top 10 and the Latin honor system and might be concerned if an academic life skills student who's working at the highest potential for that student, which is fantastic and wonderful, and we want them to be as inclusive as possible, but for some reason the grades calculated and the child was third in the class. It's based on the potential that child had, that student, young person had, that's wonderful. But it may cause some tension in the community. And if the goal is to ensure we're transparent, honest, and building success for these learners to ensure they can earn an appropriate diploma, then the suggestion was to have it be unranked.
I almost feel the opposite way.
That's
pretty
fine, but we
strongly.
just decided we'd
No,
put
I
it out there
agree.
and have that
But it
conversation.
feels, yeah, no, it's fair. It feels like it should be, if we're trying to assimilate and make it structured and they're earning the same program, why wouldn't it? And then if they're part of the community, peers shouldn't feel like it's, I just was looking up where I went to school and our folks were all together with us. We didn't even know except for a couple of classes and they walked with us and everything. So that's just my personal opinion. It feels like why do another thing where we're setting them aside? It's good, but we're not letting you do the whole thing, but I didn't grow up here, so I appreciate your comment. So we can maybe talk about it. I think that makes sense, but it made me think, are we adding, again, more on these folks? I look at Stephanie, because I know she's taught multiple grades at once,
Yes.
and she's really darn good at it. But we're adding a lot of levels in here, and is that gonna add anything, or if we just sort of taken things we're already doing and given them an official name, would you say?
Yeah, I wouldn't say
Okay,
I wouldn't say
okay.
we're necessarily like adding anything, we're just
Okay.
changing the name of the courses.
Perfect,
So
okay.
Right.
my side would be like functional life skills math, 9, 10, 11,
Gotcha.
12. And
Okay.
instead of calling it algebra 1,
Okay,
2.
that makes
So
sense.
you're gonna be more or less relabeling what already exists. is what you're
Exactly.
saying.
That
And
makes
having
sense.
it be reflective of what they're actually doing.
So it'll make overall your job easier and more.
Yeah.
fluid.
Yeah.
And you'll feel genuine to what you're doing, is
Exactly, yeah.
what I'm getting
Yeah.
from it, yeah.
For sure.
Will it be helpful for the parents and the children involved?
I absolutely believe
Yeah.
so. Just with the short conversations that I've had with my 9th graders, they are so confused. They have no idea what's going on with
Right,
with
yeah.
coming in. It's
Yeah,
not just
sure.
no idea, just seeing like they're taking algebra 1. No way. I had no idea. I'm like,
Right.
well, they're actually not, but we have to label it as such.
Right,
If they're gonna graduate with a diploma. So just having clarity, so by the time they come to high school, hopefully we can have these pathways at the middle school level, so we can start to have those conversations and start to bridge, well, does this student belong in my program or in Stephanie's
Gotcha,
program?
yeah.
Mm.
I'm trying to play catch up with a lot of things you guys are very used to, so. It sounds like maybe we're labeling things algebra that isn't algebra. Is that dishonest to the child and the parent though, to do that? Because does it create a false sense of, oh, I know algebra, but I really don't, so, I mean, you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and
And
I
I think
think,
that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
You're trying to end that
We're
type
trying
of
to end that,
labeling?
yeah.
Yes.
Just be more honest about what actually
Yes.
is going to be done in the end.
And it's something we talk about in their IEP meeting, so like when we're talking about the classes that they're taking, we talk to them about, well, the class is called Algebra 1, but we're working where the student is instructionally. But still, even then, it's just more clear if the class just says, math, academic life skills or functional life skills math or
I almost think if you over exaggerate what they're doing and then the child realizes eventually that, wow, I really didn't get this.
right,
You might be kind of setting them up for an emotional
yeah,
tumble.
Yeah.
And I know this from experience. I have a son that went through special education, an IQ of 65, 70.
Yeah.
And so it was really important not to fake him out with saying, what you're gonna do is, you are gonna be an astronaut.
right,
No, you're not.
Right.
You might be able to fly a small plane, but you're never gonna be an astronaut. So it's important to be really honest with people that are living with that type of disability.
absolutely. Yeah.
If this helps,
Yeah.
that would be a good
I think
thing.
it's just important to have those realistic conversations with the
Mhm.
parents and the students too, because we've just had a conversation the other day where we had a student in the classroom who was taking geometry.
Yeah.
And with another student in a regular ed classroom, and the kid that was taking the geometry in our room was like, oh, I'm doing that same sort of stuff. No, you're not. But it's just getting them to understand where they are, where their abilities are, still holding them to to the highest standard that we can, and
Right.
making them, just getting them to understand what their abilities are versus like the reality of what their opportunities are as well. So like what you say, not being an astronaut, I mean,
Very important.
but they also are capable of doing great things too.
There you go.
So.
Absolutely.
But I think for the child's benefit, you could say you are doing proportions of algebra because
Oh,
we
for
really
sure.
start algebra in kindergarten. As soon as we
Yeah.
put a triangle in
Right.
instead of an X,
Yep.
that's an algebraic concept.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so you could say, yes, you're doing geometry also. This is a geometry concept, but it's different.
Right.
And so that way, I think there's a little self-esteem built,
For
but
sure.
honesty at the same time.
And that's where like on the curriculum side, beyond the proposal, I can certainly work with them. Stephanie's done this work with me before, and where, we work through the strands that are K-12. But then, and they know this because they're writing IEPs that are based on
Yeah,
standards.
that's what I was gonna
They already
say.
know how this
Right.
plays out
Right.
that way. I did just want to make note that there are opportunities for students, for many students to have class experiences alongside their peers
Yeah, I
where
was
the
seeing
fit is
that.
right.
Yeah.
And that's embedded in here, and you build it out based on the individual student, right, and their readiness for that.
Nice.
And that's what we're gonna talk a little bit more about next, is how to increase that, but it's not meant to be fully self-contained, right? It's as much as possible, have students working alongside their peers where we can.
Right.
And it gives you enough to sustain the IEP, but then still feel like you're doing the curriculum, so that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This proposal, just so you see, also it does delineate academic life skills and
Mm.
functional life skills with criteria
Right.
for entry, so that then the parents or the families and the educators can work together and say which is the right path. And Jess and Steph are sort of speaking to that, but I just wanted to make sure you saw it on the last couple of pages.
Yeah.
They've really spelled it out so that it truly becomes a team decision, right? And that's how you do it in practice, but having it documented is really what you're trying to get at.
Because we don't want people to just say, oh, well, we want our kid to be in this program because it's an easier pathway for graduation. We want them to actually have the
Into what
need
you-
and.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If a student earns a certificate of attendance or completion, they don't march. If they earn a diploma and they want to march, they can march. And so that's the other piece here, right?
I'm again back to, it feels like for the community piece, they should all be included and there shouldn't be any difference. If their path allows them to get whatever the final product is. But I don't know what you guys talked about or
And if
what
they
you
met the
said.
standards
That's
for
what I
their
mean.
path, if they
Yes.
met the
Right.
standards, they've done everything they can do
Yeah,
on their path, then that's comparable to me as.
yep, I'd agree.
Absolutely.
So there's two things I just wanna make sure we recognize. One is, if we make a recommendation to the policy committee to look at the policy to enable this pathway okay, let me try it again. One would be, is there a recommendation to support this pathway rationale?
I think I'm hearing yes. I'm just looking. Jeff, would you agree? Support this pathway as written.
I think so, yes.
Okay. 2, 3 yeses. Then Linda gets a plus for the.
Yeah, she doesn't,
Attending.
Linda can't vote until Thursday, but she gets to contribute to the conversation. Once she gets sworn in Thursday, she can actually vote.
Which will be good when we get to the.
But she's been on
Board.
curriculum before, so she
Totally.
knows how
Yes,
this works.
yes.
She's taught algebra before.
I was gonna say.
She's taught geometry before.
Yeah.
She's taught
So
special ed before.
Then the question is, do you want to then you need to decide about the policy implications.
Mhm.
Do you want to provide some guidance to the policy committee as they consider the IK? So it's IKF is the policy.
Right. I had it up. I don't know if it's worth us all looking at it, and if there's thoughts or edits you want to send to me, then I could send them to you. Is that helpful, or do you want
It's
it?
up to you. So I'll say the only edits really, because this paragraph really allows most of this to happen.
Right,
The only edits that really come out of this is making a decision as to whether or not the course names
Right.
need to be part of the policy,
Mhm.
or if they can be part of a program of studies with clarity about alternate options for certain students instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're still requiring 3 maths. That's not gonna change. And then in your more, that's your goal-based policy. And then in your more procedural policy, which is your program of studies or your student handbook, you put in the specifics. Which would allow for that differentiation, which really only exists with this group potentially and all others. But you would put it there instead of putting it in your major policy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think we're
Um,
agreeing that's okay as well. I'm looking to see if Jeff is
Well, you
following
have
and
to just
Diane.
think about that.
I do, yeah. But I mean, we just made, I'm thinking of future edits too.
Yeah.
We have gone into the policy 3 times just for
That's what
math.
I'm thinking. I was on policy
In my
before.
6 years, we've gone into IKF 3 times
Yeah,
just for math.
That's what I remember.
We've gone into IKF, I don't know how many times over COVID
Mhm.
because of the community
The
service
community service,
requirement.
that's right. So I'm just thinking of that. Diane, what do you
You
think?
already go through your
Yes,
program
okay.
of studies and student handbook
We do.
every year.
Yeah.
But you
Jeff,
don't
do you have
always have to
thoughts
go
on
through
that?
IKF.
It's IKF.
It's the graduation requirement policy. It just outlines how many credits.
Yeah.
What allows you to march and not march, what are pathways, there's already a pathway for students
Mm.
under this like generic list of millions of options. We just don't have it formalized like this.
And it's got the ranking
Oh,
and
and the
stuff.
community service and the
community
ranking
service.
information.
Yeah, I literally think I went through all those edits with you too.
Yes,
That's why I'm thinking of this.
that's what it includes. It's those details.
Yeah. It's very well done. Thank you for your time doing it.
So I guess the thing that would hold this up is if we decide to keep the course requirements in policy IKF, this proposal can't work, basically.
Right,
That's, but we can't change the policy, we can make a recommendation to policy committee.
right, right.
And then another group gets to think about it.
But we can tell them what we talked about and they can watch this meeting.
But do you think it's an okay idea? Cause they're gonna
They
they would
totally will.
ask.
Jeff, what do you think?
I think it's the people that are doing it
Right,
are the best source of information. It sounds like it would make it a more streamlined job for you. It would be better for the students, better outcome for them. Perhaps a more honest way of informing the student and their parents about what is really happening. It doesn't create unrealistic expectations. In fact, it gets rid of that. It sounds like you've been dealing with a lot of building people up, but it's really not true. Am I hitting this right at all? Okay.
Well,
Like I said, I've gone through this with my own
Yeah.
son, so I recommend at least the policy committee should be listening to this and take on these changes.
agreed. So you have all three of us again on that?
Well put.
Yes.
Thank you, Diane.
Which then
And
leads
just-
us to
Yeah,
the
and just to
other.
be clear, you're
Yeah.
not changing the credit
Right.
requirements.
Exactly,
You're moving where the course requirements are discussed.
Right.
To allow for this 2 pathways to be discussed in that document instead of the main policy document.
Yeah.
It's still, Algebra 1, geometry would still be required for all students with the exception of students enrolled in the life skills program, but they would still be required to have the number of math credits that all students have. So just
Right.
saying that one more time.
Yep. I appreciate that.
So then that brings us to the next proposal. Same group of students, plus a few. So it's called the Unified Social Studies course. So if you've been here for Unified Basketball, you understand that it's an opportunity for students in an identified program to have access to activities and learning like all students. However, they also have an opportunity to be partnered with a student not in the program as like a peer support or peer mentor. And you build a more inclusive learning environment where all people feel like they belong, they're supported, and they can contribute. So that's the goal. The suggestion is to start small and be thinking about, is there a way to mimic that social sports space in an academic setting? We're not the first, just to say. There are many, many schools who have unified academic courses. We do not. So there's a proposal here for us to try one, and to try it in social studies for a couple reasons. One, it's actually a place where we could say they could learn aspects of world history, aspects of US history more than 1 year in a row, a little more honestly, to a degree. And it would also provide leadership opportunities for students not enrolled in the life skills program. And since we're in budget season, it would not change workload at this point when we've looked at it with the principal, because we're reorganizing the essential skills courses. And so that students have more access to what we call academic level courses. So the reorganization has shifted the number of courses that need to be offered at certain levels. So this slides into a spot we have without requiring an additional person, or it's not preventing us from eliminating a position if we had to. That's a terrible way of saying it, but since we're in budget season, I'm being real.
Yeah.
So in terms of workload, it's just an adjustment of a course. This, I'm gonna have Katie is the one who wrote the proposal up. Katie was not at the conference recently, but Jess and Steph were, where Morse High School in Bath has a number of unified courses. So they got to kind of see what that looks like a few years in, many years into their system, a more mature system. And so as every student from the life skills program is partnered generally with one or two students, peer leaders, and they go through a curriculum together. But they get two different sort of credits, and I sort of outlined that on page 1. So Katie, do you want to kind of talk through the 3-year opportunity? Remember, in our district, all students have to have 3 years of social studies credits. So she lined it up towards that. But this particular program would be electives for the mentors. And it would be, which is just a shift of what we already offer. It's no extra electives. It ended up not really being extra in social studies because we've had to make some shift in social studies anyway. And it would be required for life skills students. 2 things happening in the same exact course with one academic teacher and some support from the life skills program. Okay, take it away.
All right. Thank you. So one of the things that I have noticed this year with the students from the life skills, academic and functioning life skills, typically what happens in an academic setting is that the whole group kind of travels together to one class. So it doesn't really matter if there are like freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, they're all gonna go into the same course. So what this kind of does is makes it so that there are 3 years, and then it's offered on a rotating basis. So each year only one of the sections is offered, and it's just a way for all of the students to take it together with everybody else as well. So like Angela said, there would be mentees that are in there and mentors. So it'd be the life skills students with the academic students, and they would be kind of like paired up. And then as far as like the actual curriculum goes, it would be much more relevant to what those students need to learn. So instead of focusing on battles and wars and kind of like overarching like eras in history, they would be doing more so things with like civic and government, thinking about like how to mail a letter, how to write a letter, how to sort of do these things that they may need to do to exist in society after graduation. So I really just thought about what are the skills that these students need in order to advance themselves in society? And is social studies a place where we could give them a lot of these needs while following the social studies standards that we already follow as a department? And the answer was yes, they are. So looking at the standards that we have in our department anyways, they're very, they're a lot about like inquiry-based, kind of more vague understandings of the world, not super specific on events. So I was able to kind of map out a pathway for the 3 years, split into 6 semesters that are all focused on a different theme.
Yeah, so like citizenship here, you're talking about power structures, voting, job skills, community engagement, legislation, things that are important for any person in a community. You outline the standards they would tie to. And then students would learn that with support from a peer, in a partnership. And of course, the leadership of the educators or educators,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Would this in any way hold back the mentor? I mean, the rest of the class that they're in, would it slow down the learning of the students that aren't affected by this?
No, so it is a required course for the life skills, but then it's an elective for the other students. So the other students would know going into this course that it is an elective and what the goals of the course are. And there would be a process in order, not any student could join the class. They would have to have a reference from somebody else in the school that shows that they understand what it is that they're doing and that they would be responsible enough and able to be in the
So
course.
it wouldn't interfere with their learning?
No,
Right.
no,
They'll-
it's not.
They'll still take social studies.
Right, yes,
This
yes.
is not their social studies class.
Right, they'll still take a year of world cultures and 2 years of US history under an honors track or an academic track or whatever of AP course options they have. And because they have a suite of electives they can take, they can choose film studies, or they could choose an extra art class, or they could choose this and say, I'd like to actually be a peer mentor in this.
Yeah.
That answers my
Right.
thoughts. Thank you.
They would be learning more leadership skills as opposed to the content of the course. Although I'm sure they would learn some content
I think they
because just because, but
Right.
their focus would be like, how do I help somebody through this and learn this material as opposed to it taking the place of their social studies requirement.
Would they get community service hours?
My goal
Yeah.
is that their community service requirement, so the 60-hour requirement for life skills students would be done in the course throughout the 3 years.
Right.
So we would go on and do 80 minutes of community service every
Right.
couple of weeks. And then the students who are in the course could get that as well.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it was
Awesome.
that's a real benefit, I
That's
think, for
really
both
cool.
parties.
Yeah,
And it leads me back to why they should walk at graduation and they're doing all the same things.
right.
Very nice.
So did you say that you'd like the mentor to stay with the student for 3 years?
No, not necessarily. For all 3 years, the students would have a mentor,
But
but.
not necessarily.
Right, so the students, the mentors could take just a semester if that's all that could fit in their schedule, or they could take multiple if they could fit that, but
It'd be amazing if they stayed for 3
Yeah.
years.
that would be very neat.
The fun part, though, is that then you build like connections with
Totally.
numbers of
Right.
Yeah.
students across the
Advantages to
school.
both sides.
Yeah.
And we've already seen you've already seen such a big
Yeah.
change just with the unified.
Watching our students walk through the
basketball.
hallway
Yeah.
with some of the regular
Oh,
ed
that's
students,
great.
they give them high fives, like the kids are
Yeah.
rock stars at the building. And something that they
Yeah.
just preached at Morse was including having these types of classes just continues to create a mindset change. That these students belong in the building, they belong in regular ed classes, and it's considered a regular ed class, not a special ed class. and they're included more. There's more compassion amongst regular ed students. It changes a mindset, the more opportunities that we have to put these kids in situations with their peers and to be successful. The more they're working together, it's collaboration amongst their peers, and they kind of almost like, I won't say like they police themselves, but they hold each other accountable, like especially with the regular ed students. If they see someone making fun of the special ed students, they hammer them. So it really is a mindset change if we're able to slowly make this shift, so.
And honestly, a lot of our students come back to this community. They may go away for a little while, but they come back. And if they have these relationships built and then they're back in the community together, and I think that just creates a better connected community, which, we're always fighting against disconnection right now, I think.
Right. I think that sounds wonderful. Morris must have had great luck and with what they've done.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to go see their classes and how the kids work together, just kind of seamlessly.
And all the students belong. There was no class that we had seen that they didn't belong in some capacity. So there's so many ways to make most of the classes at the high school inclusive if we just change the mindset. So I think this is a small step in making that happen and hopefully opening up some other teachers that may be wanting to.
That's what I was just gonna ask you, can then start to get the waves out to teachers to see it's not a disruption to your class, it enhances
Right.
maybe people raising their hand and engaging in class and so forth, yeah, great. So do you need a nod on this as well for next year?
Definitely do.
What do you think,
This
Jeff?
one does not have a policy implication.
Right, this is just added to our chart for
So
next year?
this would be, to add it to the program of studies, recognizing that this is not a workload concern. It's not
Right.
3 classes in 1 year, it's only 1 class
Right.
each year over time.
Yep,
So there's no added classroom instructor needed, this is
Right.
all covered with what we already have.
Yep. And we made sure we went with Lauren, our principal, and she sat at the table with us and we went through the whole spreadsheet
Nice.
of
good.
over time to make sure it could fit.
It's neutral in that way then.
Yes.
We recommend.
You agree? We all are agreeing today, and even Linda, I bet if I asked her.
Absolutely.
Look at that, we're like a
Thank
3+ today. This is great. I think I learn a lot in life, right? When you write stuff down and then you have a good plan, then you can just go do it.
Yeah.
And you already are doing it, so I appreciate you all sharing it. And thank you for writing such a great course. What a great idea.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that'll be great,
Yeah.
I think you're just breaking down barriers in general because
right?
probably my own experience is people are fearful of what they don't experience and you're giving them the experience to do this.
Yeah,
And that
very well
just
said.
takes away all the barriers you're talking about because you have experience now. Oh, I've done that before. I've seen someone like them before. This is no big deal.
Yeah, totally.
Are there any
So-
other questions from the group?
Where did is it in there as to who marches? Or is it?
So if they earn a diploma, they march. And so it will, if the policy, we recommended the pathway. So if the policy committee is willing to adjust policy IKF so that we can move the course requirements into the program of studies or student handbook instead, then there's no barriers for them to move forward with this pathway and earn a diploma as long as they're meeting their IEP goals and objectives. And if they aren't, and there's a true assessment done, then they'll still earn a certificate of completion.
Which is what's in the policy now, so I pulled that up, so we can read it later, but just to read it, that's what it says. Certificate of completion is determined by the principal and the IEP team, but they didn't meet the requirement for graduation, so this pathway will allow them to meet the requirement, but it's not giving them any advantage, it's just allowing them a path to get there. And then if they earn the right to do graduation ceremony, they shall do so. And then we can talk about the ranking another day, but I know it'll be a discussion.
Talk about the what?
The ranking, class ranking, so if they were to have grades and so forth, yeah. So
Yeah, so I could,
maybe we start with this and then we have another conversation if you think that's appropriate. I would be curious to hear what you all think about if that's like, I don't want to use the word sheltering them, but setting them up for disappointment or something if they don't think they're gonna do that anyway or something. But what if they do? Then they should get whatever ranking they get, you know? Like, why shouldn't we? That's sort of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I see it both ways.
I do,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see
I
it both
can see
ways,
both,
like,
yeah.
I absolutely 100%
Yeah.
agree with you, but I
Yeah.
agree with, like,
Yeah.
on the other side of it as well, so.
Yeah.
We all make choices for a lot of these folks, like, this is one more thing, they earned it, so they should get what they earned, is how I feel.
And they're working, I mean, they work
Yeah.
really hard. It's
That's what-
not like
yeah.
they're working less hard. They're
That's right,
still,
exactly, exactly.
You know,
Mhm.
What about a 10+1?
So.
You haven't been here when these
Yeah.
meetings have happened, Linda, let me tell you.
We tried getting rid of the top 10 and it
No,
did not
no,
go
but
over well,
top-
and it
and
came
then
back,
one
so.
One from
Um,
this group.
So one of the
Hmm.
things, but then there'll be other groups.
Yeah, totally.
So-
Right.
One of the things that maybe grading should be tabled and we should come up with a very specific
That sounds
proposal.
like, take
Because
that
one of
back
the
and-
other options is if they do go unranked, then they can't actually earn Latin honors. And that
Oh.
doesn't seem, Latin honors is a wide range of a GPA.
Right, based on your GPA.
Magna, summa, and cum laude.
That's
And that
true.
is, anyone gets it as long as their GPA is in
That's
those
right.
categories.
Mhm.
And there's a list, maybe there's a chord for one level or something. And then on top of that, this community decided they still want to maintain the top 10, so we still have the top 10.
Right.
So that's like a layer on top. If we unrank these students, then they not only can they not earn a top 10, they can't earn a Latin honors system. So maybe we need to go back to the table on the rankings, on the grading conversation. And again, I always also try to lean on the people who are working with the
Yeah.
families and the students the most. But we did bring our school counselor into the conversation, one of them, and our special services directors, and our school principal. And maybe we need a follow-up on that, just to make sure we're making a really careful and judicious decision rather than it's an in or out. Maybe it doesn't have to be binary, maybe there can be something.
And I would say, don't put like pressure on a time frame. I feel like the program change is important and let you do it, but then like, what do you think is a time frame to talk about that? I don't want to be unrealistic, but I also don't want people to feel like, well, we have to do it now. We can make changes.
I think we'd have to decide by the fall,
Okay,
because I'm
Okay.
sure there'll be students where this could become
where they could actually achieve whatever.
something they'd want to, families
Okay,
might have
that's
questions
fair.
about, but we could get it in the fall cycle, I
Okay.
think, and have it still be appropriate.
Okay,
I'm gonna make a note,
all right.
so I don't forget. Cause they do, and it might actually come out of policy as our question too,
Totally.
but it's a different
Yeah, I
policy
agree.
potentially.
Mhm. Sorry, I gave you more homework.
It could be on the handbook side.
Yeah,
Okay. Any other questions or lingering thoughts?
no, thank you for doing this. Thank you for continuing the charge.
Thank you for spending extra time. You
Yes.
folks, your contract ends at 2:30 and it's already 4:30 and
Yes,
you're
thank
still
you.
sitting here, so thank you so much.
So we are adjourned at 4:25.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you. Good to see you. I just
That's
see you
exciting.
everywhere.
know, he's all over the
We're
place.
just everywhere together. I love it.
I heard she won though.
She got
which is
first place.
amazing.
She
I'm
came
so
to
proud of her.
dance competition, first one we ever did, she got first.